Anwuli mocked Chinelo, reminding her of what she said the last time, that Chinelo would never find love in her life because she was too ugly to be loved. This pierced Chinelo's heart, as the entire village mocked her because of her husband. Once upon a time, there lived a woman who the villagers believed was extremely ugly. Her name was Chinelo, and she lived with her old mother in a very small village. The whole village named her Unjo because of how ugly she was, and this made Chinelo sad as she longed to be accepted and loved by her fellow villagers. Despite her outer appearance, Chinelo had a heart full of kindness and a spirit that never gave up. One day, a girl named Anwuli approached Chinelo to mock her physical appearance. She told Chinelo that she was too ugly to get married, and Chinelo, although hurt by what Anwuli had said, ignored her as she walked away. Anwuli derived pleasure in making fun of others, unaware of the pain that she was causing them. As the years went by, the young women of the village began to get married one after the other, but no man ever came to ask for Chinelo's hand in marriage. Chinelo, although troubled by the idea of remaining single all the days of her life, focused all her time and energy on her craft. She was a female carpenter in the village who worked in her late father's workshop. Chinelo made the best furniture in the entire village, and the people, despite mocking her physical appearance, could not dispute the fact that she was so talented. One day, Chinelo was returning home from her workshop late at night when she saw some men trying to kill an innocent man. She quickly rushed to save the innocent man when one of the men used a sharp object to scar her face. Chinelo screamed in pain as the men all ran away, fearing what will happen if the villagers caught hold of them. The young man who she saved was filled with remorse for her. He thanked her for saving his life and then proceeded to assist her home. As the days went by, the wound began to heal but left a very huge scar on Chinelo's face. The young man, whose name was Ejike, frequented Chinelo's home to check up on her. He felt so guilty for all that happened, and his remorse deepened with each passing day. Not long afterwards, Ejike asked Chinelo to marry him, and the entire village was in shock as they never expected a handsome man like Ejike to marry Chinelo, who was not only ugly but had an ugly scar on her face. Tongues began to wag that Ejike was only marrying Chinelo out of pity, and everyone began to speculate that the marriage would never last. On their wedding day, the entire village gathered to witness the ceremony as they all looked at Chinelo with pitiful eyes. As the days went by, Chinelo and Ejike began to live as husband and wife. Ejike showered Chinelo with so much love, but as the years went by, the love he showered upon his wife began to wane. Ejike realized that he truly married his wife out of pity, as he could no longer stand the thought of being seen in public with his wife. He started going to social gatherings without Chinelo and would say hurtful things to her at every given opportunity. Chinelo began to live in regret as the man who she married hated her with every fiber in his body. Everything she did irritated him, and this hurt Chinelo so bad as she decided to focus on her craft once again. Chinelo spent most of her time at her workshop making beautiful furniture, and this became the norm in her life. Her husband Ejike started spending time with a certain woman in the village, and one day, Anwuli decided to stop by Chinelo's workshop to inform her of her dear husband's escapades in the village. Anwuli mocked Chinelo, reminding her of what she said the last time, that Chinelo would never find love in her life because she was too ugly to be loved. This pierced Chinelo's heart as the entire village mocked her because of her husband. One evening, Chinelo returned home from her workshop to find Anwuli with her husband. She could not believe her eyes, as she never imagined that the strange woman that her husband had been frolicking around the village with was the same Anwuli. Chinelo confronted her husband to know what Anwuli was doing in their home, and her husband informed her that Anwuli was going to be his second wife. Unable to stand this revelation, Chinelo ran into her room and began to weep. She began to regret ever marrying Ejike, as truly his actions had shown her that he married her out of pity. A few weeks later, Ejike got married to Anwuli as his second wife, and Anwuli insisted that he send Chinelo away, as she cannot stand sharing her husband with an ugly scar-faced woman. Ejike, without thinking twice, sent Chinelo away, casting her out of the home that they once shared. With a heavy heart, Chinelo sought solace in the only place that had always welcomed her, her workshop, where she poured her heart and soul into crafting beautiful furniture. Despite the pain, Chinelo immersed herself in her work, finding refuge in the sound of her chisels and the smooth strokes of her hands as she worked. The whole village was now filled with whispers of Chinelo's failed marriage, and the people laughed, saying that they knew that the marriage was built out of pity, as Ejike was too handsome to marry an ugly girl like Chinelo. One afternoon, Chinelo returned from the market and met her workshop upside down. Someone had destroyed all the furniture she had produced, and Chinelo fell to the ground in pain. A very rich woman had contracted her to produce some unique furniture, which she was to deliver to the woman the next morning. The sight of her life's work being ruined brought tears to her eyes. Chinelo was so confused, as she wondered who could have been so wicked to destroy all the furniture that she had spent weeks to create. Devastated at what had just happened, Chinelo decided to start afresh, as she didn't want to disappoint the rich woman. She locked herself up in her workshop as she began to make the unique pieces again. Night came, and Chinelo stayed up as she continued to work. The next morning, the rich woman arrived at Chinelo's workshop and met her sitting amidst the remnants of her destroyed furniture. Chinelo narrated all that happened to the rich woman, pleading for time to restore all the pieces that were destroyed. The rich woman smiled and told her not to bother, as Chinelo passed her test. What had happened was that the rich woman contracted Chinelo to create some unique pieces for her and sent some men to destroy them to see what Chinelo would do in such a situation. The rich woman owned the biggest furniture shop in the whole village, and Chinelo never knew that the rich woman was her biological mother. The old woman, who she grew up to believe was her mother, was the wife of a popular carpenter in the village, who the rich woman paid to raise her daughter into a respectable and hardworking woman. The rich woman planned on handing over her business to her daughter and needed her daughter to be well groomed to successfully handle the business when she was ready. Impressed by Chinelo's resilience, the rich woman, who was Chinelo's biological mother, revealed the true purpose behind her test. She explained that she did what she did to see if Chinelo was ready to take over their family business, and was impressed by her exceptional craftsmanship and strength of character to overcome challenges. Chinelo was shocked at the revelation and couldn't believe that the rich woman was indeed her own biological mother. The rich woman apologized for the emotional turmoil she had caused Chinelo and expressed her admiration for Chinelo's unwavering spirit. She apologized to Chinelo for being absent from her life for all these years, saying that she did what she did to ensure that Chinelo grew up in discipline, as she feared that Chinelo would have grown up a spoiled and uncultured girl if she grew up in wealth. The rich woman then offered her daughter Chinelo an opportunity of a lifetime to take over their renowned family business. Overwhelmed by the unexpected turn of events, Chinelo broke down in tears as she never knew that her family was extremely wealthy. She remembered all her years of hardship and rejection and couldn't believe that her days of suffering was finally over. Chinelo, with a mix of emotions, hugged her mother as she accepted the offer, and the news spread around the village, leaving everyone astonished by the shocking revelation. The ugly woman, who they had once mocked and pitied, was indeed the daughter of one of the wealthiest women in the village, and Chinelo automatically became the most envied woman because of how rich she became, and her ex-husband Ejike regretted his decision to leave Chinelo to marry Anwuli. Even Anwuli envied Chinelo, as she never knew that Chinelo was from a very wealthy family. The entire village witnessed the transformation of the woman they once ridiculed into a successful and rich woman. Ejike and Anwuli's marriage ended after a few years as they began to fight frequently and couldn't live together in peace. However, Chinelo ended up marrying an extremely rich man who loved her for who she was, and they both lived happily ever after. The lesson to be learned from this story is that you can never build a happy home on top of the tears of another woman. Never marry a person out of pity, because pity lacks the fundamental ingredients that can sustain a successful marriage. Learn to be compassionate and kind towards others, and never judge people based on their appearances, as you never know what the future holds for them. Finally, never give up on your dreams in life, but be resilient and determined, as there is nothing you cannot achieve. I hope you enjoyed the story.
Like, subscribe and leave a comment. It helps us grow our channel. I'll see you in our next story. Bye.